My name is Paulina Smith, and I'm 27 years old. I used to think love was about patience, about waiting beside someone while they built their future, trusting that one day they'd turn around and make room for you in it. For 4 years, that was my truth. 4 years of waiting, working, and believing in a man named Wayne Cole. He wasn't cruel, not at first. If anything, he was everything I thought I wanted, ambitious, charming, in that disheveled student way, the kind of man who talked about making it big while I was the one keeping the lights on. I worked full-time at a design firm while he studied business, and when the rent came up short, I filled the gap without a word. He'd kiss my forehead, say, "I'll pay you back when I graduate," and I'd smile, pretending I believed him. The thing about slow sacrifices is that they don't hurt until they do. You give a little of yourself each day, your sleep, your weekends, your pride, until one morning you realize you've built someone else's dream instead of your own. The first year we were unstoppable. Wayne used to call me his anchor. He'd study until 2 a.m., and I'd stay up with him, editing his essays, bringing coffee, listening to his half-formed ideas about startups and investments. We made plans a house by the lake, a dog matching mugs for Sunday mornings. He said he wanted a life that looked like us. But somewhere in year 3, something changed. It wasn't dramatic, just quiet. His phone stopped staying face up. His tone softened when he said certain names. There were study sessions I wasn't invited to, any more new friends I'd never met, and a coldness that crept into his hugs like frost. When I asked if everything was okay, he smiled that easy smile and said, "You're imagining things, Paulina. I've just been busy." Busy. The word became a wall between us. Still, I tried. I told myself it was stress, that finals were coming, that I just needed to hold on until graduation. I told myself he still loved me even when the evidence said otherwise. I held on because that's who I was, steady, loyal, unwilling to give up on someone I'd built my world around. One evening, I brought him dinner lasagna, his favorite. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Thanks," he muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Wayne," I said softly, "you've been miles away lately. Did I do something wrong?" He sighed, the kind of sigh that makes you feel like a burden. "No, Paulina, not everything's about you." That one stung. Not because of what he said, but because I knew then I wasn't even in his story anymore. I was background noise, the quiet hum that helped him concentrate while he planned a life that might not include me. That night I sat on the balcony watching the city lights blur. I told myself I'd stop waiting for him to look up to notice me again. But then I heard the door creak, and his voice behind me, soft, almost apologetic. "I didn't mean to snap," he said. "You know how stressed I am." I nodded like always. "I know." He kissed my shoulder and whispered, "Once I graduate, everything will be different." And I wanted to believe that so badly I did. But things were different, just not in the way I'd hoped. He started staying later on campus. When I'd ask who he was with, he'd shrug. "Just people from my group project." The name Melissa came up once casually, like it shouldn't mean anything. "She's just helping with research," he said. I didn't push it. One night I woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing. He was asleep beside me, the screen lighting up his face. The message preview read, "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow." My stomach dropped. I didn't check the rest. I didn't need to. I just set the phone down and stared at the ceiling until morning, feeling the quiet truth settle in my bones. The next day I tried to pretend I hadn't seen it. I made coffee, kissed him goodbye, smiled like everything was fine. But every time he said "love you," it sounded like punctuation, something he added out of habit. That weekend, while folding his laundry, I found a receipt for a dinner reservation. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine at a restaurant we'd never gone to. The date matched the night he told me he'd been studying late. I remember standing there, holding that little slip of paper, realizing that the version of love I'd been defending was already gone. Still, I couldn't confront him. Not yet. Because some part of me, the part that still remembered his hand in mine during his first job interview, the way he'd whispered, "You're my reason," wasn't ready to face what came next. That night he came home smiling, humming under his breath like a man whose life was just beginning. I asked, "How was your day?" He kissed my cheek. "Productive." I nodded, forcing a smile. Inside, something fractured quietly, the kind of break no one hears until it's too late. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. Looking back now, I think that was the last normal night we ever had. After that, every conversation felt like walking on thin ice, pretending not to hear the cracks beneath our feet. But denial has a way of protecting you until it doesn't. And the moment it shattered was the night he said the words that would rewrite everything between us. "Maybe you shouldn't come to my graduation, Paulina. It'll just be awkward with Melissa there." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at him, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, the lasagna on my plate going cold. In that silence, something inside me began to die. Not love, but illusion. The illusion that patience earns loyalty, that kindness guarantees respect, that waiting beside someone means they'll wait for you too. I didn't know it yet, but that small shift, the way he said, "Don't wait up," was the beginning of the end. The silence that followed his words didn't sound like silence at all. It sounded like the hum of the refrigerator, the scrape of his fork, and my heartbeat pounding in my ears, all louder than they'd ever been. "Wait," I said carefully, as if the right tone could change his mind. "You don't want me to come to your graduation." Wayne didn't even flinch. He just kept scrolling on his phone, the blue glow reflecting off his glasses. "It'll just be awkward, Paulina," he said, like it was a perfectly reasonable thing to say to the woman who paid half his tuition shortfall. "Melissa's going to be there. She's part of that chapter of my life. I don't want drama." I laughed softly, even though my throat was tightening. "Drama? You think I'd cause a scene at your graduation?" He sighed, finally putting his phone down. "No, it's not that. I want the day to be peaceful. She and I are friends now. She helped me with some networking stuff. It's complicated." My voice came out smaller than I expected. "You're inviting your ex, but not your girlfriend." Wayne leaned back in his chair. "You're twisting this. It's not about choosing one over the other." "It's exactly that," I said, my voice breaking. "You're choosing whose presence makes you more comfortable, and it's not mine." He rolled his eyes as if I were a child who didn't understand logic. "Paulina, please. You're making this harder than it needs to be." That sentence, "you're making this harder than it needs to be," hit like a slap, because I'd made everything easy. Rent meals, notes, rides, late nights, reassurance. I'd spent 4 years smoothing the edges of his life, and now he was telling me to step aside because it was simpler. I set my fork down slowly, my hands trembling. "So let me get this straight. You want your ex-girlfriend cheering for you in the crowd, but the woman who helped you get there can't come, because it might be uncomfortable for her." Wayne's tone sharpened. "Don't guilt-trip me, Paulina. This isn't your achievement. It's mine. You've been supportive, and I appreciate that, but what I asked, but not enough to stand beside you when you finally succeed." He exhaled hard. "I don't owe anyone a photo op for being supportive." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, this man I'd built my life around, and realized how little space I actually occupied in his. He looked at me like he was waiting for me to apologize, to say I understood like I always did. Instead, I smiled faintly. "You're right," I whispered. Wayne blinked. "What?" "You're right," I repeated. "You don't owe me anything, and I don't owe you my dignity." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" I stood up and carried my half-finished dinner to the sink. I said quietly, "If my presence embarrasses you, I'll make sure you never have to worry about that again." "Paulina," he said, his tone firm warning. "Don't start this." But it wasn't a fight anymore. It was a revelation. That night, I packed a bag, just clothes and essentials. No dramatic yelling, no pleading. I folded the shirts I'd ironed for him, the ones I'd washed in lavender detergent, and placed them back in the drawer where they belonged. His world, not mine. When I zipped my suitcase, the sound cut through the apartment like a final verdict. He stood by the door, arms crossed. "You're seriously leaving over this?" I paused. "No, Wayne," I said softly. "I'm leaving because of everything that came before this." He scoffed, trying to act unfazed. "You're being emotional." "I've been emotional for years," I said, meeting his eyes. "You just stopped noticing." His face softened just a flicker. "Come on, Paulina, don't make this dramatic. It's just one event." I smiled, the kind of a smile that hurts more than crying. "Then it shouldn't matter to you if I'm gone." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time in a long time, he had no script to follow. I left the apartment just before midnight. The air outside was cold, sharp against my skin. The city lights blurred through my tears. But the ache in my chest wasn't from heartbreak, it was from relief. I'd been holding my breath for so long, waiting for him to love me the way I loved him. Now I could finally exhale. At the bottom of the stairwell, I turned my phone off. It buzzed once in my hand, his name flashing across the screen before I silenced it. I couldn't read his words yet, not because I didn't care, but because I finally did about myself. When I reached my car, I sat there in the dark, staring at my reflection in the windshield. I looked tired, older, but beneath that, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, a spark, the tiniest flicker of the woman I used to be before I became his shadow. He texted again that night. "Paulina, you're seriously leaving over this. You're blowing things out of proportion." "Paulina, it was just one day. Paulina, stop making this a big deal. I didn't reply. By morning, his tone had shifted. You're acting childish. You'll regret this. Don't throw away what we built. I put my phone face down and walked out of the room. The silence was brutal, but it was mine. When I finally crashed at my friend Natalie's apartment, she didn't ask questions. She just handed me a blanket and whispered, "Whatever happened, you did the right thing." I wanted to believe her, but as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I kept hearing his voice. "It'll be awkward with Melissa there." That one sentence replayed in my head like a cruel lullaby until I realized what it really meant. It meant he'd already made peace with her presence. He just hadn't bothered to make peace with my absence. And that's when it hit me. I'd spent 4 years helping him chase a future I was never meant to be in. So I did what I should have done long ago. I deleted his number, blocked his messages, and whispered to myself in the dark, "You can't heal in this place you were convinced to stay small." The door had closed behind me, but for the first time, it felt like an opening. The first morning after I left Wayne's apartment, the world felt too quiet. No sound of his coffee machine sputtering. No rushed footsteps. No half-asleep kiss on my cheek. Just the hum of the ceiling fan and my own breath echoing through Natalie's spare room. For years, my life had revolved around him, his deadlines, his meals, his moods. Without that orbit, I didn't know where to stand. The silence was both mercy and punishment. I sat up staring at my packed suitcase by the door. I told myself I'd go get my things later. The rest of my clothes, my camera. The box of letters I'd written him, but never sent. But I couldn't bring myself to see him yet. Not when I still heard his voice saying, "It'll be awkward with Melissa there." That day, my phone lit up with missed calls and unread messages. I didn't open them. But later, curiosity won. "Wayne, Paulina. You're being ridiculous." "Wayne. It was just one day. Why are you acting like I cheated, Wayne? You're making this harder than it has to be." Every message carried the same undertone, not regret, just irritation that I'd disrupted his routine. No apology, no accountability, just words meant to pull me back into orbit. I turned off the notifications and went for a walk. It was raining, the kind of light drizzle that blurs everything. I didn't bother with an umbrella. I needed the water, something cleansing, something that didn't ask anything from me. Each step felt like reclaiming inches of myself I'd given away. The following week was harder. Nights stretched endlessly. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., hand instinctively reaching for a side of the bed that was no longer mine. I'd catch myself checking my phone, half expecting a goodnight text that would never come. Natalie tried to help. "You did what most people can't," she said one evening over takeout. "You walked away before he destroyed what was left of you." I smiled weakly. "Then why does it still feel like I'm the one who lost?" "Because you're still detoxing," she said simply. "Love is a drug. You're in withdrawal." I didn't want to admit she was right, but she was. Every time I thought about him, I missed the version of Wayne I'd met years ago, the one who laughed too loud at bad movies, who held me when I cried, who whispered, "You're my calm." The problem was that man didn't exist anymore. Graduation day came faster than I expected. I hadn't planned to think about it, but at work someone mentioned the traffic near campus, and it hit me like a slap. Today was his big day. For months, I'd imagined sitting in the crowd, cheering, crying, believing we'd made it together. Instead, I was at my desk drafting marketing copy about vacation packages, trying not to picture him in that gown, smiling beside someone else. At lunch, I opened my phone. Against my better judgment, I searched his name. There it was, the first photo. Wayne in his cap and gown beaming beside a woman in a red dress. Melissa. Her arm looped through his. The caption read, "Couldn't have done it without this one." No tag. No mention of me. 4 years erased with a single post. My chest tightened. I stared at the screen until the image blurred, then locked my phone and pushed it aside. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. The tears had run out weeks before the truth did. That night I went for a run. Something I hadn't done in months. The city was alive, neon signs flickering against wet pavement. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the pain felt cleaner than anything I'd felt in years. When I got back, my phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it, but then I saw his name. Wayne. "You saw the pictures, didn't you?" "Don't twist it. She's just a friend. I told you that." "Wayne, you could have been there, Paulina. You chose not to." I stared at those words until they blurred into white noise. Then I deleted the thread. Days turned into a week. The silence between us became a strange kind of companion, sharp at first, then dull, then almost comforting. I stopped checking his social media. I stopped wondering if he'd call. I stopped trying to understand how someone could discard years of love so casually. Because maybe it wasn't casual. Maybe he'd been planning it all along, phasing me out piece by piece until I'd do the breaking for him. And even though that realization hurt, it also freed me. Because once you see that kind of truth, you can't unsee it. A few nights later, Natalie found me sitting on the balcony with a mug of tea. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "I think so," I said. "For the first time, I don't want to fix it." She smiled. "That's progress." I looked out over the city lights flickering like tiny promises in the dark. I used to think if I was good enough, loyal enough, patient enough, I could make someone stay. And now I know love shouldn't need convincing. Before bed, I opened my phone one last time. His contact was still saved, Wayne. I edited it, erased the heart, and replaced it with his full name. Just Wayne Cole. No title, no sentiment. Just a man who used to be part of my story. Then I blocked his number for good. The screen went black, and I caught my reflection, tired eyes, faint smile. I whispered, "You did it." Not because I'd stopped loving him, but because I'd finally stopped waiting for him to love me back. It wasn't heartbreak anymore, it was revelation. 3 weeks after Wayne's graduation, the world had moved on except him. Or maybe except me, if I was being honest. There were still mornings I'd wake expecting a message, still nights when my brain replayed our last dinner in an endless loop. But the pain was quieter now. Less of a scream, more of a low hum under my skin. That's the thing about silence. At first, it's unbearable. Then it becomes the soundtrack to healing. I filled my days with noise that wasn't him. Work, gym, friends, podcasts while I cleaned the apartment. Every small thing I did without his shadow there felt like an act of rebellion. Cooking dinner for one, buying a single movie ticket, sleeping diagonally across the bed. One Sunday, while sorting laundry, I found one of his old t-shirts mixed in with my clothes. The smell hit me like a memory, that faint mix of detergent and the cologne he wore when he wanted to impress people. I stared at it for a while, then walked it straight to the trash chute. Some things don't deserve storage. That same afternoon, my phone buzzed. Blocked numbers can still find ways through email, social media, mutual friends. This time, it was a message request on Instagram. Wayne. "Hey, can we talk? I just feel like there's a lot left unsaid. You're reading too much into everything. It wasn't like that with Melissa." I didn't reply. I'd learned that silence could say what words never could. By evening, there was another one. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Paulina. You know me. She was just a friend. You've always been the one I could count on." The words "count on" made my chest tighten, not with longing, but with clarity. Because that was all I'd ever been to him: dependable, convenient, predictable. He didn't miss me. He missed the version of himself he got to be around me, stable, adored, unchallenged. A few days later, I met my friend Natalie at a small coffee shop downtown. She scrolled through her phone and frowned. Paulina, you should see this." She turned the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of Wayne's latest story, a wine glass half empty, sitting across from an untouched plate. The caption read, "Some people never change." Melissa's initials were tagged. I stared at the post, waiting for jealousy, rage, heartbreak, something. But all I felt was nothing. "Guess karma runs on schedule," Natalie muttered, sipping her latte. I smiled faintly. Karma doesn't need to run. It waits. In the following week, snippets of his life reached me through friends. Apparently, Melissa had cut him off completely. Something about him not being over his ex. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. What mattered wasn't what she did to him, it was what I didn't do. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I didn't take the bait. I just kept living. I picked up photography again, something I'd abandoned when I got too busy being his support system. The first time I took my camera to the pier, I cried behind the lens, not because of him, but because I realized how long it had been since I did something just for me. The ocean doesn't apologize for its tides, I thought. So why should I apologize for changing too? One night, Natalie came over with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. She grinned. To freedom. I raised a brow. Feels dramatic. Come on, it's been a month of zero contact. That's worth celebrating. I laughed, clinking her glass. Fine. To freedom. She took a sip and said softly, "You know you're lighter now." Lighter. "Yeah," she said. "Like you've been carrying something heavy for so long and finally put it down." I smiled. Maybe I did. She nodded. Good. Because that man was never a weight worth lifting. Later that night, alone in bed, I scrolled through old photos. There we were, smiling, holding hands, pretending to be unbreakable. I hovered over the delete button, hesitated for a moment, then pressed it. Every image disappeared one by one until the screen was blank. It didn't feel like erasing the past. It felt like making space for what came next. The next morning, I woke early. The sun streamed through the curtains, warm and soft. For the first time in months, I didn't feel that ache in my chest when I opened my eyes. I made coffee, stepped onto the balcony, and looked at the city below. Cars rushing, people late for work, 1,000 little lives unfolding without me needing to fix a single one of them. That was peace. Not loud or triumphant, just quiet, earned, honest. And yet, even as I breathed it in, a small part of me knew Wayne wasn't finished trying to pull me back. Because some people can't stand losing control even when they're the ones who let go. Karma didn't roar. It whispered and I heard it. Wayne's messages stopped for a while. A week of silence, then 2. I thought maybe he'd finally moved on until one evening my friend Ben sent me a screenshot with no caption. It was Wayne again. His social media full of vague posts about being betrayed by fake people and starting over alone. The irony made me laugh quietly to myself the way you laugh at a bad joke you've already heard too many times. By then, my life had finally steadied. I'd landed a small promotion at work, a new project lead position, more hours, but better pay. I was exhausted, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that comes from building something for yourself. I'd stopped looking for him in crowds, stopped checking mutual friends' stories. But that night, curiosity, the dangerous kind, got the better of me. I searched his name again. His last post was 2 days old. A blurry photo of an empty living room. The caption read, "Moving out. Life's funny sometimes." The comments below told the rest of the story. "Hang in there, man. You'll bounce back. Didn't your girlfriend help with rent?" That word girlfriend stung in a way I didn't expect. Because for years, that was my role. The helper, the safety net, the person who picked up the slack when things fell apart. But now someone else was supposed to do that, and apparently she didn't. A few days later, an email slid into my inbox. No subject line, no greeting, just him. I don't know who else to talk to, Paulina. Things got complicated. Melissa isn't who I thought she was. She bailed the moment I needed her. My landlord's kicking me out next month, and my parents won't help. I messed up. I see that now. You always understood me. Please, can we talk? I read it twice, then a third time. There was a time those words would have cracked me open, the guilt, the pity, the urge to fix. But this time they just felt heavy, like he was trying to pass his chaos back to me. I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I'd finally learned that caring doesn't mean returning to the fire that burned you. A week passed, then another message came, this time from a mutual friend. "Hey, just so you know, Wayne's been asking around for your number. Says he lost touch after changing phones. Wants to apologize properly. You okay with me giving it to him?" I typed one word back. No. And that was that. Still, a part of me felt uneasy. Because I knew Wayne, he didn't do closure. He did persistence. And desperation, when persistence stopped working. Sure enough, a few days later, a message appeared from a random account. No profile picture. "You think you're better now. You think this is funny. You walked out when I needed you the most. Don't act like a saint." For a moment, my old instincts kicked in, guilt, confusion, fear. But then I noticed something in the message that made me stop. He said when I needed you, not when I loved you, not when I missed you, just needed. And suddenly everything made sense. He didn't want me back. He wanted the version of me that paid bills, made excuses, and kept him comfortable. But that woman didn't exist anymore. 2 days later, Ben texted again. "You won't believe this. Wayne's living back at his parents' place. They told him they're done helping him. Guess the job offer he bragged about fell through." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. It was like watching a movie you'd already seen, the ending predictable, the dialogue tired. Still, I couldn't help but feel, not joy, but balance. For the first time, consequences were catching up to him, and I didn't have to lift a finger. That weekend, Natalie and I went to the coast. The air smelled like salt and new beginnings. I walked barefoot through the sand, feeling the cool water rush over my feet. "Do you ever think about him?" she asked. "Not the way I used to," I said. "I think about the version of me who loved him. She deserved better." Natalie smiled. She finally got it. When I got home that night, I found another email from Wayne. Short this time, almost pitiful. "I don't know what else to do. I can't make rent. My parents won't help. I know I messed up, but you always had my back. Can we please talk?" There was a time I would have jumped into action, calling, offering money, rationalizing his failures as bad luck. But I'd grown quiet enough to recognize manipulation disguised as humility. I hovered over the reply button, typed a single word, "No," then deleted it and closed the window. Because even no would have been engagement. And silence was power. Over the next few weeks, his spiral became public. Posts about loneliness, cryptic quotes about learning who's real, friends unfollowing him one by one. He even tagged me in a sad song, once the kind people use when they want attention without accountability. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I focused on my work, my photography, my peace. And every time I came home to my quiet apartment, I'd smile at the stillness. Because it wasn't emptiness anymore, it was freedom. Late one night, I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea and watched the city lights flicker below. A message from Natalie popped up. "He's blaming you now. Says you abandoned him when he needed you most." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "He's right." Because sometimes walking away is the only kind of love left to give. When I put my phone down, the night air felt cool against my skin. The same city that once felt too big now felt like mine again. Wayne had finally learned what I'd been trying to teach myself all along. That when you treat someone's love like it's infinite, eventually it runs out. He taught me how to stay silent. Now my silence was teaching him what it cost. It happened on a Saturday morning, one of those slow, golden mornings that smell like coffee and quiet peace. The kind of morning I used to dream about when my life revolved around someone else's deadlines. I had music playing softly, sunlight spilling across my kitchen floor when I heard it. A knock. At first I thought it was a neighbor or a delivery. But then the knock came again, hesitant, familiar. My heart dropped. I walked to the door, and before I even looked through the peephole, I knew. Wayne. He stood there in a wrinkled hoodie hair, unkempt eyes, red-rimmed. He looked nothing like the man I used to know, the one who strutted through life like the world owed him. This version of him looked small. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Can we talk?" I didn't move. "Wayne, this isn't a good idea." "Please," he said quickly, glancing down the hallway. "Just 5 minutes. I need to say this in person." A part of me wanted to shut the door, but another part, the old reflex of compassion, wouldn't let me. So against my better judgment, I opened it wider. 5 minutes, I said. He stepped inside, looking around like he expected to find traces of himself still here. There were none. He started pacing. "I've been trying to figure out how to reach you," he said. "You blocked me everywhere." "I did," I said calmly. He nodded, eyes darting, hands trembling slightly. "Look, I know I messed up. Okay, I got in over my head. Melissa, she wasn't who I thought she was. She used me, Paulina. The second I was done helping her with her projects, she left. Just he snapped his fingers like that." I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. "I'm sorry that happened to you." He let out a bitter laugh. "That's it. You're sorry. I don't know what else you want me to say." "I want you to say you understand," he said, voice rising. "That you get how hard this has been for me." Something inside me went cold. "Wayne, do you hear yourself? You're talking to the woman you told not to come to your graduation because your ex might be uncomfortable." His face tightened. "That was a mistake, I admit it, but I was under pressure." "No," I cut in. "You weren't under pressure. You were selfish, and I let you be." He blinked, stunned by my tone. The old Paulina, the one who smoothed his edges, never would have said that. He sat down on the couch, elbows on his knees, voice cracking. I thought she cared, but she didn't. You did. You always did. I took that for granted." I stayed silent. "I miss us," he said softly. "I miss you." I wanted to believe him, but the thing about people like Wayne is they never miss you. They miss how you made them feel. "Wayne," I said, choosing my words carefully, "you don't miss me. You miss the version of me that never said no." He looked up startled. "That's not true." "It is," I said, my voice steady now. "You want comfort, not connection. You want someone to patch the holes in your life again like I used to. But I'm not that woman anymore." His jaw clenched. "You think you're better than me now?" "No," I said quietly. "I just think I'm finally me." He stood abruptly, anger flickering behind his eyes. "You know what, fine. Pretend you're healed. Pretend you're over it. But don't forget who made you believe in yourself. You were a mess when I met you. I'm the reason you even got that job. You used my connections. I didn't flinch. And you used my kindness. Guess we're even." He stared at me, breathing hard. "You think this peace you've got will last? You'll see. People always leave." "I know," I said softly. "You already did." The silence that followed was heavy, a silence that didn't belong to him anymore. He looked around once more as if hoping something in the room would beg him to stay. When nothing did, he scoffed under his breath and muttered unbelievable before walking out. The door closed behind him with a dull click, and for the first time, I didn't crumble. I stood there staring at the wood grain of the door, my hands trembling not from fear, but from release. No tears, no shaking, just quiet. I made a cup of tea, sat on the couch where he'd just been, and let the steam warm my face. His presence lingered faintly, the echo of old chaos, but it didn't hurt. If anything, it felt like cleansing smoke after a fire. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, "You can forgive someone and still never let them near you again." Because forgiveness isn't a door reopening. It's a lock clicking shut with peace instead of rage. I didn't hate Wayne. I didn't love him either. He was simply a lesson. One I'd finally learned. When I looked at my reflection before bed, I caught something in my eyes, calm, steady, unshaken. The version of me who once begged to be chosen was gone. In her place stood a woman who finally chose herself. And I knew deep down that was the real graduation. For years, I thought love meant saving someone. Turns out it means saving yourself first. For the first time, I didn't need him to understand. I needed him gone. It's funny, people talk about closure like it's a door you slam shut, loud and final. But real closure is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It just sneaks in one day when you realize you've stopped rehearsing the pain. It had been almost 4 months since I last saw Wayne. The days had settled into a peaceful rhythm, early mornings, strong coffee evening jogs, weekends with friends who made me laugh without having to shrink myself first. I'd redecorated my apartment, new curtains, new bedding, even painted the living room a soft sage green. It wasn't about forgetting him, it was about reclaiming space that used to belong to his shadow. I'd even stopped glancing at my phone before bed. The absence of his messages had gone from ache to habit to relief. So when I got an invitation to a friend's small get-together downtown, I didn't think twice. It felt like time to show up for life again. The cafe was dimly lit, full of warm chatter and clinking glasses. I was halfway through my drink when I heard a voice behind me. Paulina. I froze. I hadn't heard that voice in months, and yet my body still recognized it instantly. Wayne. He looked different. Thinner, pale, like he hadn't been sleeping. The confident posture he once wore like armor was gone. He smiled weakly. Hey. I blinked, steadying my breath. Hi. He gestured to the empty chair beside me. I didn't answer right away, but I'd spent months finding my peace, and I wasn't about to let fear dictate my night. So I nodded once. For a minute. He sat down. You look good. Thanks. He stared into his drink. I heard you got promoted. I did. That's great. Really? His voice cracked slightly. I'm happy for you. Thank you, I said simply. The silence that followed was sharp, the kind that forces truth to the surface. Finally, he spoke. I've been thinking a lot about what I did, about how I treated you. I stayed quiet. I know you probably hate me, he continued, but I was stupid, Paulina. I thought I needed space, freedom, whatever. But all I did was push away the only person who ever actually cared. I met his eyes. Wayne, I don't hate you. His face softened. You don't? No, I said. I just don't feel anything anymore. The words landed like glass, breaking quiet but irreversible. He blinked. Nothing. After everything we had. I remember what we had, I said gently. But I also remember what it cost me. He leaned forward. We can fix this. We can start over. I've changed. Maybe you have, I said, my tone calm. But even if you did, you're not the lesson I want to repeat. He swallowed hard. You really mean that? I nodded. You once told me not to come to your graduation because my presence might make things awkward. That was the moment I realized I'd been standing on the sidelines of your life clapping for someone who never looked back. He opened his mouth, but no words came. And now I continued, I'm not standing there anymore. People nearby had gone quiet, sensing the weight in the air. He looked around embarrassed. Can we not do this here? I smiled faintly. Relax. I'm not here to humiliate you. I just needed to say it for me. He nodded, slowly defeated. So that's it. That's it. He tried to hold my gaze, but eventually looked away. You'll regret this one day. I shook my head. I already did, Wayne, years ago. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the door. Behind me, I could feel his eyes following, like someone watching a train leave that they thought would wait forever. But I didn't turn around. Outside, the air was cool and alive with the city's heartbeat. I stood under the streetlight, breathing it in, the sound of music spilling from open windows, laughter from strangers, the rhythm of a world that had moved on without needing my permission. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I felt whole. That night, I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on the balcony. The city stretched before me, lights shimmering like new beginnings. I thought about all the versions of myself. I'd been the girl who waited, the woman who walked away, the one who learned that love without respect is just captivity dressed up as devotion. And then I smiled, because this stillness, this freedom, this peace was mine. The next morning, I opened my journal for the first time in weeks and wrote one final entry under his name. He graduated with a degree, but I graduated from him. People say heartbreak changes you, but I think it introduces you to the person you were always meant to become once you stopped being someone's lesson. So maybe that was my real ceremony. No cap, no gown, no applause. Just me finally walking across the stage of my own life and not looking back.